If your girlfriend ever texts you, telling you she's standing outside your apartment, don't unlock the door until you've seen her with your own eyes. Because on National Girlfriend's Day, I learned that sometimes the person texting you isn't the person waiting outside. This happened on August 1st, 2023. My girlfriend Emily and I had been together for almost 4 years. We weren't the kind of couple who celebrated every holiday, but she loved little traditions. National Girlfriend's Day had become one of those excuses to order takeout, watch horror movies, and laugh about how cheesy the whole thing was. She worked as a nurse at a hospital across town, and I worked remotely from my apartment in Portland. We talked constantly throughout the day. At 7:42 p.m., she called. "I'm leaving in about 40 minutes, she said. "You better have ordered my favorite noodles." "I already did," she laughed. "I'll see you soon." That was the last normal conversation we ever had. Around 8:30, I finished setting everything up. The food had arrived. Candles were lit. The living room lights were dim. Outside, rain tapped steadily against the windows, and the hallway beyond my apartment door remained unusually quiet. Emily hated driving in the rain, so I expected her to be a little late. At exactly 8:54 p.m., my phone vibrated. "I'm outside. Open the door." I smiled. Perfect timing. I walked toward the entrance, reached for the lock, then glanced through the peephole out of habit. The hallway was empty. Not just empty, completely still. No footsteps, no elevator sounds, nothing. I checked again. Still no Emily. I texted back, "Where are you?" Her reply came almost instantly. "Outside your door. Don't use the peephole. Just let me in." I stared at the screen. Emily always made fun of me for checking the peephole, but she'd never tell me not to use it. Something felt off. Then my phone rang. "Emily." I answered immediately. "Hey, where are you?" She sounded annoyed. "Still on the freeway. Traffic is barely moving." I felt my stomach tighten. "What? What do you mean, what?" "I just got your text." Silence. "What text?" I told her exactly what I'd received. She became very quiet. "I never sent anything." Before I could answer, 3 slow knocks echoed through the apartment. Knock, knock, knock. Emily heard them through the phone. "What was that?" "My front door. Don't open it." I stepped backward instinctively. The knocks came again, exactly the same rhythm. Slow, patient, not aggressive, as though whoever stood outside knew they had all the time in the world. Another message appeared. "She's lying." Then another. "Open the door before it's too late." Emily whispered, "Turn your phone on speaker." I did. Neither of us spoke. The hallway remained silent. Then, someone outside laughed softly. Not loudly, just enough for us both to hear it. Emily inhaled sharply. That sounded like me. It did. Exactly like her. Same laugh, same breathing, same little pause she always made before speaking. Then came her voice. "Baby, my phone died. Can you just open the door?" Emily squeezed out one terrified sentence over the speaker. "I'm still driving." I backed into the living room. My apartment suddenly felt much smaller than it ever had before. The rain outside intensified. The hallway light beneath my front door flickered briefly. Then my apartment lights dimmed, just for a second, long enough for my heart to start racing. The voice returned, softer now. "I'm getting cold." Another knock. "Knock, knock, knock," Emily said. "Call 911. I grabbed my phone and realized the call had already disconnected. No signal, no Wi-Fi, nothing. Every device in the apartment had lost connection at exactly the same time. The knocking stopped. Silence filled the apartment. 5 seconds, 10, 15. Then I heard footsteps, not outside, inside the hallway of my apartment building, walking slowly away. I finally worked up the courage to check the peephole again. The hallway was empty, except something was wrong. The welcome mat outside my door had moved. Someone had rotated it upside down. I knew I hadn't done that. 10 minutes later, Emily finally arrived. This time, I watched her walk down the hallway through the peephole before unlocking the door. The moment she stepped inside, she hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. Neither of us slept that night. Instead, we watched the building's security camera footage with the apartment manager the following morning. At exactly 8:54 p.m., the hallway camera showed my apartment door. Nothing unusual, no visitors, no movement. Then, without anyone visible, my doorknob turned slowly by itself. The door moved inward about an inch, as though someone outside had tested whether it was locked. No person ever appeared on camera, nothing, just the handle moving. The apartment manager assumed the lock was loose. I knew it wasn't. We tried convincing ourselves we'd imagined everything, until 2 nights later. Emily stayed over again. Around midnight, my phone buzzed, a new message from Emily. She was asleep beside me. The text read, "You finally let the right one in." My hands immediately went numb. Emily's phone was charging across the room. I picked it up. No messages had been sent, no drafts, nothing. Then another notification appeared on mine. "Next time, I'll be first." I deleted the messages, blocked the number, changed phones, changed apartments. Nothing helped. Every August 1st, at exactly 8:54 p.m., I receive one new message, always from a different number, always the same sentence. "I'm outside. I've never answered, and I never will." If someone you love hands you a gift and tells you, under no circumstances, to ever open it after midnight, listen to them. Because some promises are meant to protect you. This happened on National Girlfriend's Day in 2021. At the time, my girlfriend Claire and I had been together for almost 3 years. She was the practical one in our relationship. I was the skeptical one. Ghost stories, curses, haunted objects. I laughed at all of it. Claire never argued. She'd just smile and say, "You don't have to believe something for it to find you." I always thought she was joking. Now, I'm not so sure. Claire surprised me with an early National Girlfriend's Day gift. It wasn't expensive, just a small wooden box wrapped in brown paper. No ribbon, no card. The box itself looked old. Handmade, dark walnut wood with tiny carvings around the edges that resembled twisting branches. When I reached to open it, she stopped me. "Not yet," I laughed. "Why give me a gift I can't open?" She looked unusually serious. "You can open it tomorrow morning." "What's the difference?" She hesitated. "Just don't open it tonight." I rolled my eyes. "You know that only makes me want to." "I know." She smiled weakly. "That's why I'm asking." That evening she left for her overnight shift at the hospital. Before leaving, she repeated herself, "No matter what happens tonight, don't open the box." I promised I wouldn't. At least, I meant to. Around 10:30 p.m., the power flickered once, only for a second. I blamed the summer storm outside. The rain intensified. Wind rattled the apartment windows. I watched television for another hour before deciding to go to bed. The wooden box sat on the kitchen table exactly where Claire had left it. I walked past it. Something about it bothered me. Not because it looked creepy, because I couldn't stop thinking about it. At 11:57 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Claire. "Everything okay?" I replied. "Yep, haven't opened it." She answered almost immediately. "Good, keep it that way." That should have been the end of it. Instead, 3 minutes later, someone knocked on my apartment door. 3 slow knocks. Knock, 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 knock. I checked the peephole. Nobody. The hallway was empty. I unlocked the door anyway. Nothing. Just a silent hallway stretching toward the elevators. When I closed the door, the wooden box had moved, only a few inches, but I knew exactly where I'd left it. I convinced myself I'd remembered wrong. People misremember little details all the time. I picked up the box and placed it back in the center of the table. Then I went to bed. Exactly at midnight, I heard it. A faint scratching sound, wood against wood, slow, rhythmic, coming from the kitchen. I lay perfectly still. The scratching continued. 5 minutes, 10. Finally, I grabbed my flashlight and walked into the kitchen. The box sat exactly where I'd left it, except the lid was slightly open, barely a centimeter. I was certain it had been fully closed. My phone rang. Claire. The moment I answered, she whispered, "Tell me the box is still closed." I looked down. Before I could finish, the scratching stopped, complete silence. Claire immediately knew. "You opened it." "No." "Did you?" "The lid's just," she interrupted. "Don't touch it." Her voice shook in a way I'd never heard before. "I'm coming home." The call disconnected. For the next 20 minutes, nothing happened. I sat on the couch staring at the kitchen table, watching the box. Then I heard footsteps, not outside, inside the apartment. Soft, bare feet crossing the hallway. I stood up instantly. Nobody. Every room was empty. Then the footsteps came again, this time from directly behind me. I turned so fast I nearly fell. Nothing, only the wooden box, its lid now fully open. Inside, there was no gift, only a folded piece of paper. Against every instinct, I unfolded it. One sentence, written in faded ink. "It only follows the person who opens the box." The apartment suddenly felt colder, not freezing, empty, like something had quietly entered the room. The front door burst open. Claire rushed inside. The moment she saw the paper in my hands, she stopped. Tears filled her eyes. "You read it." "I'm sorry." She looked over my shoulder, not at me, behind me. Very slowly, she whispered, "Don't turn around." Every horror movie I'd ever seen flashed through my mind. I wanted to look. Every instinct demanded it. Claire shook her head. "It's waiting." I couldn't breathe. Something behind me took one slow step closer. I heard nothing, but I felt it. The pressure, the awareness, the certainty that I wasn't alone anymore. Claire walked toward me without taking her eyes off whatever stood behind me. She grabbed my hand. "We're leaving." We walked backward to the front door, never turning around, never looking behind us. The pressure followed all the way to the hallway. The instant we crossed the apartment threshold, it disappeared. We never returned. Everything we owned stayed inside. Furniture, photos, computers, clothes, everything. Weeks later, the apartment manager called. He said the unit had been inspected after complaints from neighbors. Every room was empty, except the kitchen. The wooden box still sat in the center of the table, closed, waiting. He asked if we wanted it mailed to our new address. Claire immediately hung up. 2 years have passed. Every National Girlfriend's Day, someone leaves a small brown package outside our front door. No return address, no postage, just our names. We never touch it. The packages are always gone by sunrise, but sometimes, late at night, I hear scratching coming from the other side of the front door. Slow, patient, like something is waiting for me to open one more box. If someone you love dies, and weeks later, you start receiving phone calls from their number, don't answer, no matter how badly you want to hear their voice again. Because grief has a way of making you forget that some things should stay silent. This happened to me on National Girlfriend's Day in 2022. My girlfriend Ava had been killed in a car accident just 12 days earlier. She was 26. We had been planning a weekend trip together. Instead, I was standing beside her grave while people I barely knew told me everything would get easier with time. They were wrong. The first week after the funeral felt unreal. I still reached for my phone to text her. I still expected to hear her keys outside my apartment every evening. Sometimes I even caught myself setting 2 coffee mugs on the kitchen counter before realizing what I was doing. Her number stayed in my contacts. I couldn't bring myself to delete it. On the evening of August 1st, I drove home after visiting her parents. The apartment felt unbearably quiet. I turned on the television just to have background noise. At exactly 9:17 p.m., my phone vibrated. Ava A. calling. I stared at the screen. My heart stopped. I knew the number. I knew every digit. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. After several rings, I answered. Silence. Not ordinary silence. The kind that hums in your ears. Then, very faintly, I heard breathing. Not speaking, just breathing. Slow, steady. Then the call ended. I called the number back immediately. The automated message was instant. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. I convinced myself it had to be some kind of network error, something explainable, something normal. I wanted to believe that. The next night, another call came. Same time, 9:17 p.m. This time, I answered without hesitation. Ava, static. Then, a whisper, come find me. The line disconnected. I replayed the call recording later. There was no voice, only static. Over the next week, the calls continued. Always 9:17, always from her disconnected number. Each call lasted a little longer. Sometimes I heard footsteps, sometimes wind, sometimes distant traffic. Then, on the 7th night, I finally heard her clearly. I'm cold. She sounded exactly like herself. Same voice, same soft laugh between words. I can't get out. I broke down crying. I don't know where you are. She whispered one sentence. You left before they finished. Then the call ended. That sentence haunted me. I remembered leaving the cemetery shortly after the burial. Had something happened afterward? Had I misunderstood what she meant? The next morning, I drove back to the cemetery. The caretaker recognized me immediately. When I asked whether anything unusual had happened during the burial, his face changed. He hesitated, then quietly admitted the lowering mechanism had briefly jammed before the grave was filled. It only lasted a minute, he said, but we had to raise the casket slightly. My stomach turned. That night, the phone rang again. You remembered. She sounded relieved. Then, don't come after dark. The line died. I ignored the warning. At 11 p.m., I drove back to the cemetery. The gates were locked. I climbed over anyway. Everything looked different at night. The rows of headstones stretched endlessly beneath the moonlight. The air felt unnaturally still. When I reached Ava's grave, my phone vibrated. Incoming call. I answered. I'm here. Silence. Then, wrong place. The screen suddenly displayed a moving GPS marker. Not on Ava's grave, across the cemetery, near the oldest section. I followed it. The signal stopped beside an abandoned mausoleum with a rusted iron door hanging open. The phone call ended. Then, I heard another phone ringing. Not mine. Inside the mausoleum. The ringing echoed through the stone chamber. I stepped inside. The air smelled damp, ancient. Dust covered everything. The sound came from beneath the floor. One loose stone sat slightly raised. Beside it lay an old flip phone, covered in dirt, still ringing. I picked it up. The screen displayed one name, AVA. The battery indicator showed full charge. The date displayed, August 1st, 2002, 20 years earlier. I answered. Instead of Ava, I heard dozens of overlapping voices whispering at once. Not words, just fragments. Crying, laughter, prayers, screams. Then one clear sentence. Leave it here. Every light on the phone went black. The ringing stopped. As I turned to leave, I realized I wasn't alone. Someone stood outside the mausoleum entrance. A young woman, long dark hair, white dress. She looked exactly like Ava, until she smiled. It wasn't her smile, too slow, too deliberate. She raised one hand, and pointed toward the phone still in my hand. Without thinking, I dropped it. The moment it struck the floor, every sound disappeared. No wind, no insects, no breathing, nothing. The woman vanished. I ran. I don't remember climbing back over the cemetery fence. I only remember reaching my car and driving until sunrise. The next day, I returned with police. The mausoleum existed, but there was no phone, no loose stone, nothing. The officers assumed grief had affected my memory. Maybe they were right. Maybe. I've changed numbers 3 times since then, moved to another state, started over. But every National Girlfriend's Day, at exactly 9:17 p.m., every phone near me rings once, just once. No caller ID, no number. If I answer, there's only silence. I never wait long enough to hear what comes after. Some things, even if they sound like the people we miss the most, are better left unanswered.